before the recording. So we will have to translate, or so I need to take a break.
Geshe-la will be there.
Be so kind and compassionate to the translator.
Yes.
By breaking in short sentences, unless it is too difficult for you, okay?
Yes. So I want to apologize first. My internet has been very bad. And so I didn't get to send any slides ahead to Geshe Dadul. And so he'll have a lot of work to translate as I'm talking, because he doesn't know any idea about what I will be presenting.
다른 남부서가 참지다시를 쉬하다. 근데 이게 당부대 공세 쉬야지가. 겔라단다 투게신 부시우체 안테간단다 공생 다답든지 안다 자메이카 금제든데 투가페든데 나지에서 밖에 자작 내단데 교수도스 티지디 아니 단다도 시티급라에 자제 내단 하는 차이면 하고 말이 근데 야 마데브도 근데 중앙 공세 쉬야다. 아니 디젠체니 nga sangsane chiki lobti chia lesson de su thati chia de ke ma jus de ma jus tanda kishitam du jurgirite khari shero yeme tan semna na khana yamares tingwen chi ngodo da de ta ani chi peta sa da de ke yamares.
So the first thing I want to say is that for this webinar series, we will have 3 sessions. And the first one is topical. It's about sleep. And the second will be more about the neurotransmission. And the third will be about emotion.
Okay. Jene taleng lopti dinalola neuroscience on the theory that they lopti thing sumi grace. Everything tangbuche any sanini shugo chizi chutu image or nila niva the sumbache. Taringi lopti jishidi ni call. Then the jama de neurotransmitters do one the timba, one the timbata, one the tindon java, go check. This work lopti thing sumbade, then some young call, emotion, some young yes.
So today, well, I know that you're having different lessons in pedagogy and how to teach. And so maybe today's example will be less didactic or less fixed. There's less lecture. We'll have a little more conversation. I'll ask questions and you'll work in groups as we try to explore some concepts in sleep.
And in numbers of the love to you, love send them in the love to Chesimbata, Chevidu, and the rest, Dinalola, the pedagogy, and Lopti ki Lopti Chetango, and the Yogi Lopsend in the Vegeti Sayus, attended the judge, Lopsam and Bukola, and Lopti Chesimbata, Chesimbata, in the rest. Taring of the day, shared the Nalola, attended 10 catch, Sotaro, Tambone 10 catch. Lopti chitang kolinda se ada uchi kolinda sen thank you the KMS chige domshi of the pa kaso de guyang buyus ni mangchia de nabaso nang pinju to do na ya ta de chen ni some kongsu kan de to some ju kan de to de che shi chia da de Chinese.
So the first thing I wanted to do today as we're talking about sleep is to ask you all students to give me some of your concepts of sleep. What do you know about sleep? And so I'm going to very quickly break you into breakout rooms, just small groups where you can talk about what concepts about sleep do you know and what parts of the brain do you just give me all the information you have about sleep and neuroscience, right? So I want to hear what you have to say, not necessarily from a Tibetan perspective, but from scientific, whatever ideas you have about sleep. So I'm going to, without any real
breakout, I just do it in 8 group. Is it okay? Because we have around 50 because we have some faculties here.
Yeah, so it's 54 in the group. So if you know, 9 in each group is fine. So you could even do 6 small groups or 7 small groups, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let me first translate. before you break out. Yeah. Jenny, nghe thằng bữa thế, ngài tụi thế dân số mang bữa nào lo phá cố sĩ giáp cái gì phá cố sĩ giáp sẽ, cố sĩ giáp thôi này, anh ấy number số nang phiên chủ tu nói đi, nhị đàn chế về, anh ấy chủ tu nói đấy, anh ấy nhị coi là number số cái khen cái nhị đàn chế cái, anh ấy chỉ ta duy mình đâu cái rồi, anh ấy nhị đàn chế cái, anh ấy ông tự thấy nào là, anh ấy cái rồi, thế đàn chế cái, ông tự thấy ta nhị bảo được giờ ta, anh ấy nhị đàn chế về, chỉ ta đang Adana langcho ro de ramina khari yume ko ki sine di zo nangcho tatang tone mes onzi tseri dan je yu no chobe tatang dan je yu to ne ani ni gi ko la na ba zo khari chen gi yu ba ta an khari yum di nang phe ju chodu na je ani shu go ya su sis ka so re ni nyen ju shi ya des.
Okay.
To be very clear, the instructions are in your breakout groups. Please discuss and come up with concepts in sleep, anything you know about sleep. That could include things you have questions about, but I just want you to come up with, in the small groups.
Jenny, Lion, the sense of Shwajila, need than jail to do Nayaris, need than jail to do Nambicala, so ni la tatan, ni than jail concept, ni than jail tatan in the Harikari, Namsha Kari, DH one the Serita, ne Serita, no show tatan, the pitcher Serita and the usual show inside. Atiri and Naloli and number two, the Chivak number lay Puchogre, Kotok number lay Puchogre, but why you number that, then the quotation without the Karina Balini Puchogres.
Oh,
Hello.
My internet decided it did not want to cooperate for the whole. Are you back and have your groups already discussed things? I would like.
Yes.
I would like for you to report what you discussed and what questions or concepts you've highlighted in sleep. So let's hear from all the groups.
Oh, Jenny, there's a kangan region to meet any subnaje, any
Okay, can I go first? So in all group, actually, all of the members raised so much questions related with sleep. And the first question is on the brain level, what draws demarcation or boundary between sleepiness and awakeness? And the second question is, what is sleep? And the third is, what is different function brain does during the sleep and during the awakeness? What does different function actually brain serves? Something like that. And the fourth question is how sleepwalk happens. What is the brain function behind it? And fifth one is one of the member actually heard there is a difference between sleeping during the daytime or nighttime. It is said that sleeping during the nighttime is more beneficial to our physical body than the sleeping in the daytime. If that is the true, and how it happens. Then the last question is, okay, how actually do we get, dream? And what's the relation between dream and the brain itself? These are the questions from all groups.
Those are excellent questions. And I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of them today, but we will be able to prepare you to understand the answers to all of those.
Oh, Jenny, should I ask, should the rest of the participants hear what their questions are? What do you think, Gillian?
I think so. Summarize, you can summarize. So sleepwalking is very important, like how, and then the difference between day and nighttime sleep stands out. And then what is the difference in activity? How do you tell when you're awake versus when you're asleep, I think. So if we can have, because many of them may have the same ideas or questions.
In that case, I will ask the question, the representative himself to kind of.
Yes, in Sanfo, in Tibetan, also for your classmates.
Sangpula, di 벽에나 덮여진 따라 지레나 숨는 시지 숨셔다.
less. Manzu ruka gi chiwa di karlana chiwa janya rechachina ni kuba da ni sebegi da chik lebe tone sanzam raw de khande chi chegu res chiwa chik che chiwa ni ba di ni sena ni khurang khar res ngo khar res ye jorwa on di che ani chiwa sumba di ni kuba da ni seba ni gi pale lebe gi cheba khar yo res on di chik che tene ani manzu chik sen ni kudu sambalo komba jena dre jorwa on di khande lebe tone chongu yo res chiwa che ani yang chikliya Chewangaba de la ni kudu ngazun sene ni kuwa da ningu ni kuwa ni nano ne and sene ni kuwa de lubule pendo chia yungu songo do o di demba ina mena kesi demba imba ina di khande songo yore se chewa chikche tene chewan thama di nilam dang di khande yungu yore nilam dang leba ni boru le jawa khande res on di ri chewa to chena
to che. Okay, Gillian.
Okay, good. The next group, same thing. If you have English translations that you can do both, but if not, then say in Tibetan and then Geshe will translate for us.
Then that ruga shibachi narona.
Kishila ngayenga ngadoga. Kishila kude.
Wala.
Ngatsugi rokaki ngatsugi dan milam nikukola the dudano jinra.
Ore.
Dan ngatsugi nyula de chetong ngatsugi lipa korong chengko resera. Geng sengde.
La one go.
Sengde.
Go.
Ngatsugi dan nyula de lipa korong chengko res. Teni lipa gi nyula parti go res. Teni nyula bdi sambala dan ngatsugi shibagi nambanjiri nibano jila chek resera. Dinano chesong. Teni ngatsu nyula korong la ngatsu mug gujo ja kapchikdo mug gujo maja kapchi ngores. Teni desu kavla da mi gujo maja de desu nyetugo yores. Teni mung gujo ja de nyetapdab na yore malam yo dik kaps tongo no jila budura. Teni ngatsu malam la tanze jini gidanda wansa gi chambano dina lokores kocho gidanda lipagi lesson gi the answer lesson da teni desu la pa dano tani o di kangono jigores. Teni dan thala mas la jo adini yar ku nisan maboji kani yendo machigano jigorelas. Tadina no ngatsu dindak chancho mato jawano musasu maso.
Oh, less. So in their group, the contribution was mostly in the form of their own understanding of what they have heard about dream from the Western perspective, saying that dream is a brain activity where brain activity kind of is involved in creating it, and that and that there are some brain transmitters involved that kind of engages, that kind of is involved with that. What else? In sleep during dream, sometimes it is accompanied by eye movement and another it is not. And that between the two, the one with no eye movement accompanying is considered to be a deeper dream, or rather a deeper state of sleep, and the other one less deep. I think that's about it. I think
that's reasonable, and that's appreciated.
Oh yeah, what should I do? To the chase. Then this go rugade.
And as we study sleep, there is a difference between sleep and dreaming. And not all of sleep includes dreaming. Only a very small portion of sleep includes dreaming. And we will study that. We will learn what those stages are and how scientists have begun to understand when dreaming occurs.
And then, Gela Rangi and the Shimjunayagi, Jushin Alola Nidi. Shimjunangi yes, didn't Nalola, Nita, and Milam Ni Kabayoris, Ni Kangala, Milam Yomaris, and Milam Yebekapi, Nita, Nilam Mebekabi, Nitanda, Seribu to Milam Candice Migi, Kalikalita, Shea, go to Yore, Hiza, do Tanegi tamshire any shuwa jayu ninandre kabla is set in shugures. Should I call the next group?
Yes, please.
Ruga Shimbachi Nalona.
Can I start?
Oh, that's all.
Okay.
Hello. Ni shuwa gijela.
Yeah, we are
Na ruga tangbudi.
number. So,
Ruga tangbudi.
Sure, chick do.
can I say something?
Oh, Swimba.
Lo ruga tang. Oh, ruga tangbo ngasuba.
Oh, that's so Surona.
Ane singide.
Oh, yeah, go do.
Ola zonganzu di ta dudu di chungsong. Tangbo de la ni de la rig ane tap dang tubol la ni rig ni doji chigdo. Ninde doji yores ne. Dikol doji ane chungs. Ane ni de ane temba so la ta yundung temba de la yundung temba dang yurin temba sine yungu do di yundung temba de yurin temba gi and di chaya la da ni di pen to res. Dinde chiro. Ane ni ane tabw capsule lang jo milam tangres tadila yang tiwa so ena tinjo kande chungila doji to tinatiko ro but dinde jinlas.
Oh, that's. Okay, so this is someone by the name of Wang Suba. I think Wang Suba, I know. He is group 1, and he says that in their group, again, it occurred mainly in the form of what they know about sleep and dream from the Western perspective, and that sleep occurs in 2 forms. One is shallow, the other one is deep. And then sleep has much to contribute towards our memory, be that the short-term memory or long-term memory, and that it's only during shallow sleep, when we are not sleeping as deep, that dream is considered to occur. And then in that regard, they are kind of wondering as to how that happens to be the connection between the dream and the shallow sleep.
Very good. So thank you. And those are all good questions and observations. So what you are doing is a very important part of the scientific method. You make an observation about your experience in the world, and then we start to ask questions about it. And that's exactly what researchers do. What science.
Observation chigris. Tango namju shipta sigiwa. You taya da toya da nyaya da donan chedwa. Odi chigiwa. Inda di tanda maju di cheshawa di. Serigi shimju chawa dan je yu keji shebina. Observation tag goba tango ni chig shipta chia di giores.
Another scientific method is to take observations and to make connections from those. So far from the 3 groups that have reported, I see very many similarities. I'm going to ask if any other group had discussions where something came up that hasn't been mentioned so far. So in the interest of time, we're not going to go through every group, but if there is a group that discussed something that we haven't mentioned so far, now is the time to speak up.
네, 신주기 신주 자와단 여기 자샤 찍디 가래했었나? 지 가리 통도 영어야기 유 가리 중보 있네. 대수 남편주라야 자와다제 지기 간데스 그거 자와도 신타야드레스. 나탄다 ngazu tunda chung simbe nesan dela shishani chabina ani korim jamande karesna tangi ruga ni sumjigi tangi ruga ni sumjigi kame sungsaro sumbo inza kame sumya kete parula ruga susu gi konjatya parula jawa khardu dit wasawati nyon sawati ani ishila sha sesu penju gi jawa khardu taidres 인자는 다 단다 든지기 체리기 카토레 제고디 대주 제베토네
자 소소샬라요 가는 취대게 자당
근데 중계 까고도 내가 까나야고 그래. 제가 고도고와. 근데 단다 뒤주시라 매자로와 강가다 당근에 시제 뒤주피야 하고 지그래 인자 단다 송사버 되죠 나부터 공개 퇴여서 대나로네 아니 대나로는 말레베 된다 사와 된다 된대요나 아니 망유를 맞을 지니 된대 그래요나 아니 단다 송에 그러나 스타트
게실라 말아지 셰디 단다 다 강선 사리 지지나 니세테니 달라피난 기타나 어떤 셰트와티 샤게 문증이 요래 연나 라파종 니 셰리저 문증이 요레스
Alehoya. So here's someone who has something different than what we have already heard. In that, when we are having sleep, is it the entirety of the brain that is involved, or is it a particular part of the brain that is involved in it?
Wonderful question. And the answer is yes.
What?
The answer is yes, it's true. Both things are true. Particular parts of the brain are more active and some parts are less active at different points during sleep. So yes, it's both. All of those things are true.
안에 지금 가수 처부터는 저 면에 지당 한간 저 여인다 저들의 랜드 인이가 디그레스 러기스 다시 봐요나
Excellent.
저지 쉐지로
오예
나 밀람도 내가 선수 중년담에 지지 차온도 차온 선바디 중년데 지당 중년 차온바디 레바 레베 차 칸데지기 톤에 중년디 샤고래 지당 중년디 지당도 요 말어 고양이나 찬망이 톤이 지나 지 레바 칸데 레베 차 칸데지기 레자 칸데지기 차린다.
So here's another one which has to do with the images that appear in dream. How come those images appear, and what specific portion or area or activity of brain is related to what appears, what those images happen to be. So in general, how come we have the images, and then maybe in particular, I'm adding a little bit in terms of why we have those images that we have.
Yes, that's a reasonable set of questions to ask, and I believe that the science of sleep gives us some indication or helps us to understand some of those things, but we don't have the answers to everything. We're still asking questions. And my understanding is that this summer, you will have an opportunity to ask some of your own questions about sleep as Drs. Gerardo and where is Robin Nussluck, I think is on here, will help you to start asking questions about sleep to get some scientific answers.
Oh. 그러면서 야보도 지워시다 야보도 지워대는 내역이 지 가서 삼주적으로 랜드색으로 해디 또스 차시에도 처무 세리기 단다 지금 하고야다 디지게 데레레션 삼주줘야 고주고 요래네야 내주 차상 단다 생기요 말이스 심주 무튼 누구 요래스 아니 남부솔라 달래 야가 송도 다 단대 디 예용 주주 링기 된다 심주 이 로빈 남바니 Nicole Gerardo ani tanda chikdi Robin Nussluck konani tanda de ngazo de nalo la nyamshu nagdo konani sengi yore konanjo ki shimju ki lobji na be kabla nabasola mixu ka ne nilam de yogi chiwa chia da di thola konanjo konju kari me de sen ki gogo yores.
Okay. Thank you so far for translating all of those wonderful questions. And what I wanted to see and to show you is that some of what I wanted you have. So the same ways that you want to think about how do we study sleep, that would be the first thing that I would introduce. And so I'll show my slides and you can see that we can look through some of the same questions that you have and start to put together how to get answers for these questions.
쟤네 단다 넘버 간디 넘버 수단 제요기 주시마 망부치다 망부치다 대와 요경기 단다 경기 되네마 롭티 기마 미변시야요 어디나로 랑기 지워규샤버 수단 제요기 니수 칼라가선 비다 디난 표용그레스.
So if you can see, oh wait, where's my shared window? I think you're not seeing what I'm seeing. 1 second, share screen. I need to share this.
Yeah, we just saw the slides.
You did? Okay, all right, let me try again. PowerPoint back here, and one more. And then should be able to do this. Okay, yes?
Yes.
You see a figure?
Yes.
Okay, so not much to translate here, but the W is for wake. And then stages, these are the stages of EEG, which we will describe what EEG is, but stages 1, 2, and 3. And then that's what we need to understand as we go across the night, 1 through 8 hours of sleep. So if you got 8 hours of sleep, this is what it could look like.
Tante number 2 the kanga this segidoa. This year no longer W the ni 7 net on the shigures, ni 7 neck up check. And the wag take the angijing in angijing ne jeb the UBD. Then Chizuk Tangadres. Any Pajogi, ya Jela Landag Tig Digi, Ni 7 neck of the neck of Shilkoshi Japche. Any Chizu Ringdung Chizu Jelgoshi Jabetone, Ni Koshi Jabetone, Tiki Nedandi, any Sujo de EEG Sidigola. Then the Hasar let Tatiku Angedi. That EEG stage, EEG nedandi shigiyores.
Or electroencephalogram, if that comes up for translation. For right now, it's okay if we just think about it as the electrical signals that the brain generates. So
let's say lowly. Tanjevita neta the Kashel Koshi Japse, Tesan Shil Koshi Japse, any Karikari you may share the sha. Yes.
So Geshla, we say the brain operates with electricity and chemistry, right? So neurotransmitters or electricity. And so the EEG is the measurement for electricity. And some of the monks have done this they've gone to Russia to learn how to do EEG for Tukdam. So it's the same sets of tools that we use to study. We also learn about sleep using those same tools. So you can remind them, many of the students know about the scholars who have learned how to set up EEG to study Tukdam. I think that they will recognize EEG here as well.
Oh, then EEG ki stage la dugan la lete lori ki netan lete lori ki kasora ta pangrim da rimba da chi ti chungu lete lori si dugan la lesa da jeyo ki log ki chawa chitan de logyu ki chawa chitan de chitan logyu ta jejur ki ni na lo ne logyu ki chawa chitan de dan jawa chagi yore jejur ki netan di den jawa mo yo den de tengi yo mare logyu ki lot let's say low risk to go low you are chungi yoris. The Navaso Kashegi and the Rachel the mixed can and subjoin Nanga pay in a you said it. The took them that they use in Nanga pay in the Crown Jogi and the let's say low rigi, Taka Chuches or Chuji, and this dig go we met Tina log and Nezu Karisab, and this any low day jabu we met Kingris. Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Is my internet back?
Yes.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm so sorry. My internet is really making.
Yeah, you were stuck a little bit, but now again, it's okay.
Okay, so this graph we're looking at is what it looks like to a sleep scientist who has recorded overnight for 8 hours your sleep activity. So all the stages that we are talking about, you could be awake. This is when you're just falling asleep. And this shows how you go through different stages. So each of the stages you spend a little time in until you get to the deepest level of sleep, but you come back up to lighter stages. And then these dark blue marks that you see, that's where you have rapid eye movement sleep or dream sleep. So these dreams usually happen only at these periods throughout the night. So as you can see, it's not the whole night that you're dreaming, that the REM sleep, when dreams can occur, only happens at little periods throughout the night. So that's the first thing to notice.
Oh, that the day Congress Siagi, Peridi, Chiki, Nitan de Yogi, Simju Chicken Chiki, Ane Michilata, Shuzu Geringa, Ni 7 and go to the Ni Kuche, and the Shuzu Gering to Dilla, and the Nig Netan Kapi, and Lebe, and Nalogi, Todando, do the Taji Sabatone, and the Kari Sabati, Tirinala. Remenal Kushab, Jill 10 degrees. Then I'll log it. W said the wake said the Ni Sabat, Ni 7, Ni Kune, Rimbe, any Ni Ting Sabru, and the Rimbe Shibachi. The name ya Ni said Rova. Or Chenny, the Ni Rimba of Shiro, things are Sabshi, Rimba of Shi, Chungi, but the Ribati, Nekap so Lebanon logi Changu, Guju, Green da. Chashagri, Karga to Guyameti, Mindamenda Kartu Guyameti, any Nanseki removed in Sungures. Then alone and the tick toss, but Carson Wona toss Chicha, you can say the toss years to or the and repeat eye moments and mig Gujo, you would have a negative nearest. Did you Namjusan and ye Milam Yoris and Laguris? A Milam Tidutan Matoshiba, the mig couple Tagmaris Laguria, take up the Binkoran la rapid eye moment sleep la Tugala Mingu Numu negative need this.
The other thing to notice on here is how as we get later in the sleep period, so hours 4 through 8, do you notice there's more of stage 3 and 4? So over here, you can see there's more stage 3.
Hello, Gillian, you're stuck. Okay, I just got part of that. Okay, that's fine. So, this and then number 2, the remote day on the Tonanjo Chila, the Niki, Rimbakora, and it Chini Sum Shilko Shijav, Negapsu, Rimba Sumbata Shive Kabla, Rimba Sumba Shive Kab Segure, Chuzu Shivane, Java Parude, Chuzu Shiva. Should the getting a new Kube neck of the Tashabina, and then G wasn't should the Shine and Jeparugi and Nedantella, and neck of Della, Nirangi, Nansegi, Desenchev Kapi, Rimbasumbata Shiva di Mangayovich. Parutomamindua, Mangadua, or the Mangayovi, the Remocona Segua, the Namazutuna Junior, the Horace.
Okay. So this looks like a perfect night of sleep, but most people don't sleep like this. This would be a perfectly healthy, very Western way of sleeping for an adult human.
Okay. That's under dinner, Remuna said the Mazus Mikanga, Surabji, and she's getting a new Kubina, and Remuchibuji, this is Yamaris, and ye cooking, and ye cook down better run. Yakshudi and the Kazore took a township of Jig Nedanjik, Daddy Dig Dunguris, the Nujogi, Tarangatone, the knee sanction Siagi, but knee township, and he meets super township, knee bed, Nedan rap, Junging Nedanjigita, Nig Nedandi, and looks in Seguris.
where's the next one? Okay, does anyone have a Fitbit or any other activity monitor that they wear? Does anybody in the group monitor their activity in that way?
Number two, tanda di sengeng nang lo la di chuje de dua some kashi nyugu de kashi karsore chingmal goya no kashi pumbal taya no yana iPhone da dizu nang nyugu dua Fitbit de subu guje jebde yana ji komba kazo be so juksha kazo le so nani kazo ning kazo par so se dezo karsore zi jebgengi ko tende chuje tanda goende de US. Maybe not.
Nobody?
La.
nge khaba na namju komba je du changa zie di tanda page dang yo mara pa nima jil komba ka je ta di
Lotte Sambula usually use his iPhone in measuring how many steps he has taken, but right now he is not not walking, so there is no registration.
Yes, that's true. But a lot of
again, you're stuck.
Collected from activity.
Hello, Gillian. I lost you. I mean, I didn't hear anything except for the very. I don't have clairvoyance that I can.
No, I'm so sorry. I don't
That's
know.
Fine. That's fine. We have to deal with it. Except I had to catch what you were saying that I had.
Okay, I will repeat.
Yes.
The difference between the slide before is that all that you were looking at was recorded activity from the brain. It was what the brain was doing. This one looks similar, but it's actually from activity. Similar to the iPhone collecting activity, it can tell the difference between active and rest, but it's not from your brain waves. It's from your muscle activities.
Oh, that's the tallest. Tagi ten shabati ta, tata de ten yi baru kebar chimbu juaris. Tagi ten shabati ni kube negapsu ni lebala ni karsore lone tuje ni tende tone leben nang logi lap ki juadu tang ki remoris. Anda di level taje tende tuje tende kani sebo ma imba. Ngazun nam juin chi jundengi yaman roya ta juchalo ta luzeta ta tende negap ki ani chige supu jiong ki guje ta ani mix kani shaju ki ro shadim ki guje ta tang deyo ki netan de ani iPhone so bo tende tuje thone ani sungshabati ani perinan seni tembusiris.
The point I wanted to make is that sleep, while it happens in the brain, is a whole body phenomenon, which you can tell because your body has to do certain things while you're asleep. So your posture changes, your muscle activity changes. There is a coordination between your brain and your body during sleep and wakefulness. And you can look at either how your brain is or how your body is, or the combination, in order to figure out the difference between awake and sleep.
Oh, then that the remuni de tango junzen di karin islam na ni de tangi taje sidu gala pedi tango de ina lebegi chasha lebegi ani lab ki yuwa todan kan dugu teje lebara hala loni tube tone loni tube ngi de na tuje di gun teber was tanda di tende majib cheni ani ni kubata ni sebata milam tambata ani ni sabu kubata ni tubu kuba negabi netan di remote chungu ina remote tayang remote di lepe lagi juwa ge remote member cheni subu jiong ge nalo gi ani ji language chasha lega chetang la ani juwa khande yimeta minda kari yimeta farbu khari dugu yime ti chungi yoris de khari tengi yorislamna ni seade ani leba chigo ji da dewa yidge ani lu subu jiong da dewa me de member subu yongzo ta dewa yidge da ni kube negapta milam tang we negapsu ti chendegi subu chashi shimbasule juwa dugu yebata ani ponju dugu yebata deres ti tengi yoris.
Okay, so one of the first questions that we got when you went to your groups and came back, I think Lodo Sangpo said, how do you know the difference between sleep and wake? What is the line between sleep and wake? And we understand the line between sleep and wake by looking at what the brain is doing as well as what the body is doing. And so together we can figure out when you are asleep and when you are awake. If we take all of those recordings, those activities, and look at them together, we can come up with a picture if the person is asleep or awake.
다기 루가 수 지와 수도 sempre kabla 루가 당보되기 지와 단다 또려서 몰라 해주시게 갑기 지와 당보랑 니 세보다 니 쿠버니 컨디션 야와 체기어래 근데 하고 그랬은 순거와 어디 세리베 다단디 근데 하고 그랬나 아니 레바랑라 인지기 lonely tuber double data any as it to on level lovela debe tone any lovki jubato tangi nisu so duje any dishi shage any nil rodo ni komundo ni sesha harta jita then she lubuji jubato tanda kas guje chetanda changuda so any tuje dende tone su dune de tone any 하고야지. 냐가님도 넘는데 다도 이제 세로 하고야지. 근데 돈에 니 스쿠브 갑래도 니 세브 갑도디 녜텐식이 어레스.
Okay, this slide I'm showing you has the recording on one side, that is what the brain is doing, but also a recording from the muscle. So the top line is your brain activity being collected from a particular region. And then the other two are eyes. So you can see what the eyes are doing because of the recording on the eyes. And then the last one is muscle. And typically it will be the chin, right? Sometimes you can collect other, but if you have all the things set up, you can see what is the muscle activity recorded from the chin, the eyes, what are the eyes doing? And then the brain is the EEG, and you can look at these. So each of these is the brain, the two eyes, and then the chin. And that's repeated for each of the stages. And I'll describe more about the stages once you understand that. The top line is the brain, two eyes, and the chin.
Oh, 세야디 디 수조대 단다디 레모 티기 레몬데 짜가지고 예부디 유스디 시다디 나노라 가리 여슬람나 니 쿠바다 니 세바다 아니 니 쿠유나 니 렘바 당보니 숨바시바 데네 미 민구 뉴메 내가기 니 소소소소 갑라 아니 레벨 자샤 가리 두고도 미기 구제 잡다 가리 두고도 아니 수부진용기 샤주 야나 샤주 있으면 말에 수부진용기 샤짐 와 샤주 있는 데도 샤짐 아니 구제 잡다 그 자샤 가리 두고도 됐다게 요레스 단다 페리레레레 나로게 담보데 이 지세디 레바랑 타야 당기 레세 로리디 바 레세 로리기 리모데데 니버디 EOG 니에버디 디캅기 닉수카네 미단제요기 자샤데레스 디레모데레스 숨버디 아니 EMG 산다디 마슬 카소 셰주 야네 셰딤기 로리데스 셰딤기 로리데스 셰딤기 로리스 디 숙체야 된다 니단제요 시두가라 말레 때제 아니 디기 티단제베 아니 안다 셰딤 구조자당기 아니 레모디 세기요레스.
So you can see here the EMG or the muscle activity when you're awake. You see a lot of activity on this channel. And then as you go into stages of sleep, you will notice that the muscle activity is not as active, right? So more black, dark lines means a lot more active. And you will see this is more active than stage 1 or 2 or even 3 and 4 because the muscle activity is different as you're falling asleep. Think about when you have to relax to fall asleep, all the muscles will stop being active and you can see the difference in this line, the EMG line. So just pay attention to the EMG line for this for right now.
And the Tomatomade ni kuboche, then she would 말에 니 세브체 디슈고데 스테이지 당본이버 숨버세데 니 후베 내거기 아니 니 파땡링링 로기 림바 쳐야 그림바 시트체 뭐가 와데 민구 뉴메카기 아니 네단체 네단 시가이 나로기 레모 티리 시바디 EMG 요사기 티리디 아니 당기 쉬브는 시체제 셰딤 구조단 제요 그레모데 쉬비마스 아니 야고 세다 당보디 대전 당보디 아니 니 세베 내거기 대전 인상 디 갑기 레모 시바디 셰딤단 제요기 아니 정규 성경기 레모디 하장 투구도 왔어 가족 투구다 낚시 체외여 대수기 아니 자샤망아여 청구여레스 데네마 아니 니쿠네 레바 당보니 숨바나 마세다 아니 티리 시바디 사브루 낚시 충을 신지 사브루 두고도 디 가르청구여레서나 니기 가족 땡름 침바 대수기 아니 류비 셰딤기 레가디 마 아니 밥두고여레서 헐 밥두고여레서 마시잖아 니쿠베 갑랑 아주 직 수부터 가서래 녜서르지 텔헐라 밥 지기로와 디쪽이 아니 셔딤단 데요기 차샤 뉴두고여 여베 인자 아니 레몬나라에 무엇도 세기여레스.
So you will notice when you're awake, the muscle activity is high and it drops out in order for you to be asleep. And then it's almost flat, completely flat during rapid eye movement sleep or dream sleep. So this is the dream sleep. And here is where the muscle activity is completely flat. There's no muscle activity.
I see. Gillian, from where I'm looking at,
Yes.
I don't see the EMG part on the slide.
Oh, you are not able to see on the slide.
Can you pull it up a little bit?
I'll try.
Okay, in any way, it is not that important. I'll just tell them. Tatanda remudi nalon remba magiwa remba shivadi go omadi ani mingu nyumuni negabdres. Ken sabchela mingu nyumuni negabdela antangi nigi remba shibut tele shibadele jang ani kaso EMG remudi sabayore special sabasore pet kora guju meding pet kaptu flat lines do sarasik 강다 와라지 사라시리 누구 연에 디기 정규 청구여와 정규야 팔북 접 청구여와 디 매버진에 틱 캅도 잡샤오네시 플랫 라인 시두글라 구조 주니 야마기 팔북이 구조 주니 매경기 내단 디 내단 이버디 단다 EMG 내단 드네 세잉그리스.
I think it's important to see that the difference between awake, so compare awake to dream sleep, and the differences between the muscles, very important, but also if you can look at the eye movements, you see as you're awake, your eyes move around. We are looking at what's going on in the world, but as you're asleep, there's not much eye movement until you are in REM sleep, and then the eyes start to move while you are dreaming.
근데 레모디 나로 라 대신 소소소 나로 레모 카면 시시에 비디 당기 쉬면 시 당보디 가서 레버드 데베 차샤 레버랑 다 데베 구조기 아니 넘버도 청구여레스 레제 로리임바 가서 로주기 자와데 근데 니버데 숨바니데 이오지 세데 믹니드레스 믹니버디 미예인이드레스 아니 시버데 아니 디임바 수구지 샤딤 구조디 레모디임바 안다 대전 소소소 니 세베 대전지 아니 니 코베 네거기 니 리바 당보 니버 숨바 시바 아니 민구 뉴면 내단기 내가 낭편주파 도리 용바이나 아니 미 구조직을 대비나 당보 니 세베가 미 구조디 시우제기 여버디 예윤이가 미 구조 시우제기 여버디 레모코나 팔부 시우리 누구 여버디 총구도 왔네 니 나를 쇼리 용도 니 나를 유리 용도 이 유르보다 뛴제 미 구조디 뉴 누구 여버디 레모 팔부디 뉴 누구도 왔 네 마친제 민구 뉴면 내가 니기 네거소 민구 뉴면 내가 니기 네거소 야미 구조디 미란다 니엘 코디 요르데 미 구조디 시우제기 여버디 레모코랑 나를 팔부 심부 여버디 청구 요레스.
The other thing I wanted to point out here is this picture is from the very first sleep lab that was run by Nathaniel Kleitman. And this is the group that discovered rapid eye movement sleep. Before that, people had made observations but had never recorded the sleep from a human in a way that you could look at it and see the difference between the stages. So this was the first sleep lab, and here is a gentleman being recorded overnight.
When was this?
In the 1950s.
1960s?
50.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes,
Then oh yeah, the tagi de na to taya di yuan cho ge de mu du mi chi du ta ta ji sig do de da ni dan de yogi anda kaso ta je khan nang gi ani simju che ni ani di ne su kaso record che ni duru che ya gi ne ta tang bu de res ding la mi chi ni kha de ime tol chen de ye ba de kon ta je de che yo de ne ta je khan che be de 아니 토도 바꿔야지. 레몬은 수세네 수고 빠심주신 따가려야기 내단데 좀 중요 말이야. 근데 이제 중요한 직동 구병납 주스나 인기에 된다. 네타니엘 캐트맨스 코미토디마다. 다제적인 미토체 아니 공기 다제세벨람네 아니 된다 페리 기토네 세든지에 다 당부 중물이스. 알레 딩외 어디가르샤 딩외는 심주 다제의 제벌데 내주도 드루 제니 쉬고 심주신 따스는 중요한 말이스.
And a funny story of
again you got cut off.
To go into the sleep lab for many years.
Gillian, I missed you. I mean, you froze again. The whole story was.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. The women were not allowed to go in the sleep lab because all of the scientists were men, and they could not record them like this. As you can see, this man is not wearing many clothes. And so the scientists were men, the women were not being recorded. So it was many years after they discovered the stages of sleep and the rapid eye movement in the lab. It was many years later before they could prove the same thing happened in women's brains.
근데 심주 통만 제일 갑라. 갑내 지네 아니 뒤즈린 부지린가 단데 니던데 여기 심주 내나 시진 제야 돼. but 심주 조사디 미시다 가서 깨바시다 깨바 포시다래마도 비메 심주 세선은 레투야 말 가서 심주 제가 되게 지금 가서 우리 둘러 비네 아니 나는 시제제 아니 로네 가제 되게 세서지 고기 여자 아니 따지 시간 간가 깨바 포시다 인상 근데 돈에 비메 심주기 아니 지게 실라 레투야 말 주린 부린가 아니 수고 아니 따지 시간 난도 왜 비메 때문에 중매로 근데 돈에 아니 비메에 대용도 니단데 여기 아니 지금 녀야 돼서 포모니 개발매버시 녀버리스.
So that's, I think, a very important thing about progress in science. I think it's important for all the people to be involved. And so that's part of why I think it's important that the monastic students are learning science, because you can start to ask questions that I can't even imagine. So just in the same way that women were not recorded because there were no women scientists, I think it's important as Tibetan monastics learn science, then they can start to ask the questions that are important, and you can get more information than we can with a Western perspective because you know more about yourselves, and so you can ask better questions. So I think that that's an important point, and you see it many times throughout the history of science where people are asking questions, but they can't ask the full question because they don't understand the lived experience.
단데기 이게 로규의 대회 내주디 셰고야 준전디 냉가지 요리스 페네차샤비나 테릭 돈에 니던데 여기 다시 시기할 때 다시 제가 두들건라 수중중의 제투비아지다 아니 지금 미 지금 릭다면다 강가티나는 레투비아지 차게 요마레스 가르선 다시 지경기 미나도 수수이면다 아니 제루 제단게 내단 la tene ani pime le matubia ne de chungbo was during bo denashi chene nabasu na kusho cheri chaya de nenga shiu tonggudo 가르스나 nabasu cheri chama tone ani cheri ki 심주 주kengi ani 가서 내단들의 중국이나 내단 될라 빠베 아니 지 내수 사원이도 녀야다 데라 고로지 사와치 그래서 가서 넘버 2 공부시단다 삼당단다 야 넘버 2의 주요야 내수에서 심바솔의 매딩이 내수도 요레스 디 차네 집어규기 이내 집어사와규 한다고 아니 도난치기 이내 도난치에서 시사원이 한다고 근데 돈에 나를 세리기 돈에 심주 미고를 맞주부터 사원이야게 라와요레스 근데 돈에 한 세리지 시제디 차상로야다 두고상로야 근데 심대 심부 두기요레스 대전에 당기 내주디 걔라 구게 돈에 이내 지직 세리기 야제기 야통의 넘버다 야제기 넘버 공부 친부지를 문진식이 되는 시 넘버 세리기 나로를 두스전에 차시셔야 돼 근데기 내가 친부 공부지 전투그레스
Thank you. The next slide I wanted to show is an image of an animal's brain. So this shows a little bit more about what we understand about the brain regions involved in sleep and waking. And we'll go through a little bit, but it is an example of how we know more about the details. And a lot of that work was done in animals.
근데 이 페리디난 세야디 아니 미기 레버마레스 둔둔 레버레스 둔둔 레버라 아니 다제칸나 심주 망부체버디 주네 아니 니다 니다 데요 니다 니 세베 내갑다 니 쿠베 내갑이 아니 저기 내당 간데 연구임에 심주디 실침보다 또 14%는 다 두기요레스 근데 따버디 주네 아니 레벨 차시 가와다 저와 칼까리 중임에 디네주디 아주 망아 해야 돼 아니 둔두 셈제 안 따지기 실을 키제 아니 따지기 실을 꿰을제 꿰부터는 아니 신기요레스
So just a few things to point out is that this is the top part here. This big section is the cerebral cortex, and that's the part that you can record the EEG from. So the electrical activity is what's recorded from the cerebral cortex, but a lot of the rhythms that are generated by the cerebral cortex actually start lower and deeper in the brain.
tanda di nala tanda lebegi design de buji goshi jabyundu anda di tengi choge lebe chashi chedi cerebral cortex na lechen de lenyini nang lechen che di chiki lechen gi kodre wa lechen de lechen di chashi di ando ni da le simju chi di ni lebe nang bi chagu de kari chungu yemendi so ani nesu tense di ani lechen de res mato te mai be chashi oma de mares inaya lechen nang la nya gi nesu de zo chik season ne go tuksa de bodi ani chashi shimbati waagi chashi shimbati zune yungu yores.
So a lot of what we know in science is historically comes from what we call lesion studies, or where you think about it, if you break something and then you can see what function goes missing, then you can make a connection between that structure that you've broken and the function that you lose. So if you lose a function or lose a behavior after you've destroyed an area, then you start to make a relationship between that area of the brain and that function.
the 세리기 따제에 되는 레바다 대역이 왕제 따제 자와래 망부지기 디 내주 사원이야다 하고야 돼 근데 하고요 내 당부대 견지 쇼네 냠견 쇼네 인지게 레전스기도와 냠견지 쇼네 냠견지 쇼네 디 젠데기 아니 게마 제투야기 젤레직다 제모도베 차 근데 토네 냠견 가와포 이미 디셰용데 디다 아니 젤레 달라 사바디 바루게 아니 데와타제 근데 쟤네 아니 레벨 샤시 수수수수라 아니 데와 가소레 데와타제 젤레 데단 데와도신 하고야디 윤도 대nga 중얼 내 용단도부터 대대신데스 냠견지는 것도 냠견 디단 제기 차샤 젤레도 그래 라게는 라바디니 바루라 an jawata an di ani ju pa jende che che ship sar te je an ta te gi du do jen ru yo res.
Okay, so this figure that we're looking at shows an example of how scientists will lesion or maybe damage an area and try to figure out what behavior changes. And it has different ways to do that. So there's a cut at 1, so you can make a cut or break the brain back at the spinal cord or right here in the brainstem. There's 2, there's another cut, and there's 3. And each of these are meaningful. You can study what happens after you've made damage in one of these areas to come together to understand what's happening in the brain during sleep.
Tata date agremo din la ani tangi kela du agdi tik ma bu tu ma tik deu ma tik kham da sum do ma tik kham da sum de ani lebe chache khawa ne jeka swebe ta je res ta ngo ina nyamje chung da ani chele la wa ni baru de ta gor de nyamje di chung bu ko de ya maro da ning je semje ni peje ta je ani ta changa nyamje so sha gi yarda tubgi yare iza ta gi angi tangbo yo se de gyungbe cho de gyungbe cho ge ani lebe chache de tubje ani de tubi na ani chele khare la do ta semje de ngi ma che tu ya da me tan de je mo do ya khare do de de na ji je ni ani bangrim simbaji je be to ne ani chele khare la ru do khare che tu min do do ta che ani dini baru de ta gi yoris.
So a lot of the ideas that the scientists got about where to make these cuts came from a pandemic, not unlike the pandemic we're living in. This was called sleeping sickness. And in about 1916 to 1930, millions of people suffered from, well, that's not true, about 500,000 people suffered from sleeping sickness in Europe. So for about 15 years, there were people who were sleeping and they couldn't understand what was going on. So there were very sleepy people or people who couldn't fall asleep at all. And during that 15 years, there was a disease that was going around that
Hello, Gillian, you have to continue.
nothing, you can't hear me?
No, I did get some, but not the last part of it, where you were saying for 15 years, they were not able to.
So there's a pandemic of people having sleeping sickness. So the sleeping sickness is what, when they studied the brains of the people who died from sleeping sickness, they started to get ideas about what areas of the brain were affected.
Jenny, and the dan de yogi, ni dan de yogi, Shimjuki, Chawade, Shimjuki, Lagati, Shu Chen Chik, the Chidong Gupja, Chutune, Chidong Gupja, Sumjubag, Lochung Eringa, Ani Chungbe, Lochung Ering Nala, and the Chik, Kachap Chempu Shibuchi, Nayam Chik, Gable, and Shemba Chungbaris. The Shember is Sungina, did you touch it over the Sungina? Recaris, did you in Nayam, the Tanamazin? I can get you to name did Mare, need and you in Nayam is me pet Sayamangbo. Miss Sayamangbo, one Yana need you need Kuma to be cook Mekubata, Yana need pet cook te chenny, ni Horana, you de pet, Junia Seroma, Tedegi, need and Yogi, another kind of Yuji Tabne, Lojonas and do tablet, and they take a cup so any another tapping into Sola. Ani lebe chashi kari le gyosho du dukseni debris. Gillian, I got confused a little bit.
Okay, no problem.
Animals' brain, and then now you're saying the brain that they looked at and they understood about the sleep was from humans. How do you connect it?
So the humans started to get sick. And because of the when you studied the brains of the humans after they died, they could see areas that looked like they were damaged. And then they went into the animals' brains and replicated that, did the same thing. So if there was an area that they saw, right, for instance, the ponds was affected, then they went into the animal brain and they got rid of that area and saw what happened. So they got the ideas, the observation from the human condition, and then they went into the animal model to test it out. And then we could confirm what the structures in the brain were doing.
Got it. That's clear. That's clear. Otherwise, if I'm confused, then I cannot convey.
I know, that's what I said. So it's a good idea to understand. If you don't understand, then they are never.
Yeah, everything you're saying is mediating through me. So I better be.
Yes. So how we get our ideas about how humans operate, and then we take it into the animal models to confirm the mechanisms.
Exactly. Now I can connect it. Sene, and the Netini Shuzuma, the data remedy any Semjengi to do Semjengi leveres. And lever day by Jacado in the Chebeton and Itachi to be as Labrava. And that's it in the true where the condition to be a gulon of the condition showers. Agi Shuyagi, Chidong get you to Ne, Sumjubagi, Lojongeringi, and in Nayam Captain Bushuchi, need and they name Captain Bushuchi, they can't change Mimambushuchi, Tone, and the Toya day and Netandi. Ni zang ma gu ya de da ya ni pe ku de che gen de gen se gu de de ge ne dan chung we shu la chong wen se chong xia mi de level dai yong de level cha xie ga xie yun de ma yin ba juan shuo ba de de yin ba so de nang yo de nang yo da di dan de ye da me ni nge den che ga dun da la ni xin ne dun du sem jian la ni pa qin jie dun du sem jian ge level ba sun bu da ngo ge ne ka jin qian ni ni da ge ye ge Mil day on the Junshaw Sha, some sadi, and Junshaw Juni, Simjin to do some jing 11 on the Jun Changa Tangni, any Missile Chunga, and Netan did a chipa Jungu, you to Teche, any Javatache, Duchen, any Chevres. Is that Tangita did to do some jing data, and the me Netan the Barugi, Jawai Chatan did this.
So I know we don't have very much time, but I wanted to take one very quick breakout group again. And have the same groups are fine. You don't have to be at the same monastery, just these random groups to go and to look if you can find any information about slow wave sleep. It may be referred to as slow wave sleep or non-REM sleep. And I'm not sure how easy that will be for you to find, but just 3 minutes in your groups, see if you can figure out, if you can search whatever to figure out slow wave or non-REM sleep. Those are just the categories that I would like you to see if you can find information about on the internet, just in 3 minutes, and then come back.
Slow wave sleep, slow waves, slow wave, SLOWWAVE, slow wave sleep check, lab debut ni, yana, any non-REM sleep, mingu nyurmu maimbe ni, mingu nyurmu maimbe ni. Again, mingu nyurmu ni biba, and non-REM sleep, NON.
Not REM. So rapid eye movement sleep, but then not that.
Yeah. Then mingu nyumu maimbe nigi netang non-REM sleep, and then slow wave sleep. The Nico Nesu Kamasumringa and Tajana Kazungo to see Jan Sulejeronas.
Okay, I can't. My internet is so bad. I am so sorry. So
we can hear that. When you say internet is bad, then we can hear it, not otherwise.
Oh, sad day, Gesha. I was in a group in room 3. They knew what was going on. So I feel okay about that group. I don't know about the other groups, but we were already talking about slow waves. So I'm going to show you very quickly again, as we are looking at the brain during sleep, you're looking for electrical activity. And when you're awake, remember these waves that we're talking about, these slow waves, you have different, or rather you have different types of electrical waves throughout the night. or throughout the sleep. So I want to go over that a little bit before we end.
단단히데 that 단단데
대치는 그 공간에 있다 그 소리를 내지.
kami sumet kajaruna kan mo kami kana gogudu da sama hanga shuru kuda
kunga sitting is
ya jene dan de te ani ni negab ki ani kare lebe kazus active yume tungbo kazus te yume di wave ki tone lab ki netang ki tone tengi duwa the lab de shejung ki remodi the saying duwa or de tengi yoresa.
Okay, so everything takes longer with translation, and then of course with bad internet even longer. So if I can get one main point before we go, I want you to see that this first line here is wakefulness. That's when you're awake. This is what the brain EEG looks like. Do you see how active it is? It's very busy.
Ada danga zindet manjo kon ne zu chik se uji ya shiak rawachigin tambudi remo tambudi wakefulness ngazu ni 7 negative ni 7 negative ki ane lebe log read ro tande di log read re log ki lab ki yuwa ki remo durwa ane high frequency si de deju hajan tempo do was deju hajan tempo si de pe dizu tundu nanglo la yama phalbu shu jugu was.
And then as you start to fall asleep or you relax or you get drowsy, the activity changes a little bit. So the nature of it, there's a little bit more of different types of electrical activity that start to show up in the sleep record.
Ene ni la kali yur wake up la ni ku ya go to wake up dua tangi de ta fa turni ona ya jigi lebe nangi ani logi activity logi chashadi and software tos minda chagduas.
Then as the stages change, stage 1, you start to see theta waves coming in. And now as you move into stage 2, you can start to see even bigger waves. So you will see high amplitude, so big waves, but they're spaced out more. They're not as active. It's a slower wave. That's what we mean by a slow wave. You start to see this activity showing up.
Tene ni gi rebatangbo che ni ba che sumba dusman dudu kala dusma rimbetion robota nyamdo tangi lebenangi logi yuwa dotangi remoti ani tos minda tungu duwas minda tondang khares lamna tangi tangbo do ina ani phanbu gi nesu di jobo shiujin tungdo na phanbu shibu chimba degi tabla ta tanda de phanbu doya kasin la phanbu penju barula pardon ro che phanbu de toru ton duwas de kazu toru chimba de sögi labgi ani kasogoreda jose de der duguyores build duguyores.
The last thing here is the REM sleep. That's the rapid eye movement sleep when you're dreaming. If you look at the rapid eye movement sleep and compare it to any of the other stages, it looks the most like when you're awake. So when you're dreaming, as you're thinking about these images and you have a whole storyline playing out, your brain activity looks very similar to when you're awake. So your dream sleep brain activity is very active and looks a lot like wakefulness.
Tene rimba shiba susuba de oma de khareslamna ani mingu nyumen ni negative sa milam tawe negative wa mingu nyumen ni nelam negative didu milam tangi yores isa sumbada shibani sumbada deni parula dorionde hajan juwa simbu chisuma tangi de sumbe kabla ani karsore migi tarjadi migi darja yana gulbang de tomboche ani parula parton simbuchen devochin rugi de sabla mingu nyumen negab so ani ya karsore labgi jose de jorichin tugruchin jigdwas peje mado ni sebe negabda jiborsor지 통해 두었지 안주 지금 이남 나로기 레모된 통보다 된주단 제역이 아니 그 자샤기 다 가서리다 축적 더부디시라 토르 침다레스.
So if you're dreaming about playing cricket, your brain looks just like if you were actually playing cricket.
근데 인자 기시 니람 나로라 cricket seven seven 니람 당게 유나 뭐에서 니 세븐 내가 cricket seven 갑기 레베기 아니 가서 그래 랍기 구조 자단다 니 쿠베 갑서 니데 코디 열데 미남 나노레 cricket seven 니 갑기 레베 아니 랍기 구조 니부디 대체 찍바로 지어레스.
And the only reason you don't get up and act it out is because your muscles are paralyzed when you are in dream sleep. Your muscles are fully paralyzed and you're not able to get up and act out your cricket dream.
Well, did ni kobe kapki ne cricket save kapki lebe guje jabdanda ni save kapki cricket save lebe guje jabdan ni jigu jaina ani ni khuktu kharje ni sege yamare sayarabse milam cricket save nilam tangdu kharje ni ya langtu yamare lamna didi ni na shurdi yoza ni ge negapso ani subu masal de subu shatim jorwa subu shatim de ani kol tibje phobana si jeje 거기 누가 강갑에 샤주네 집중 법은 이제 샤주네 muscle paralyzed 차대 여자 아니 야 랑제 때도요 말마도 레벨으로 장구 찍고 주고요레스.
So a quick thought experiment. If you wake up out of a dream, you will feel fine, like you woke up normally because your brain activity is very similar to when you're awake. If you wake up out of delta activity or slow wave sleep, the brain activity is so different from it is when you're awake that you feel different. So during that slow wave is when you feel drowsy or groggy. If you wake up out of that stage of sleep, it's hard to feel alert because your brain is slowly changing back over into wakefulness, and you tend to have that disoriented feeling where your brain is not quite like how it should be when it's awake.
As opposed to which sleep?
So REM sleep, if you wake up out of a dream, out of REM sleep, you're fresh. You feel like you're awake because your brain activity is very similar. If you wake up out of deep sleep, you feel drowsy because your brain activity is so far from where it usually is during wake.
인자 근데 인자 나도 니 세베 갑수 니 세야디 아니 민구 뉴르무 니 코베 내가 찍네 니 세베 임베당 아니 델타 액티비티스네 니 그리베 숨바 쿡 갑데네 니 세베 니 바로라 아니 니 세베 갑수 가 저기 초지당 줘봐 지 컴당로 기계당 하장 개발요레스 베나 민구 뉴르무 니 코베 내가 갑수 내가 찍네 홉간 니 세베이나 니 세용디 지금 엽나다보다 내가 요마르스 가르스나 레베기 레가체 구조기 아니 숙제라고 찍지냐레스 되게 찍지네 찍을 수 랩서지레스 데메베체 니 그림바 숨바체는 델타 액티비티 지금 가서레 로기 아니 가서 로규기 자와데 대부 시우체 아니 다르방데 톰보체니 예베갑라 아니 테니스갑네 니 세베이나 아니 니 세투 but 사라 세레더부지 다냐번여베더부지 용해디 대전 연구요래 가르스나 되게 니 가서 세로 예베급기 아니 네단디 델텍 네단 와라 네데 요사 아니 고 레베 레가도 무슨 슈즈 발로 밥시 내가 지네 합간라 아니 중국 제고 내도 차도 아니 딩이니 갑마중네 근데 토네 아니 냠난도 연구요레스. Hello, Gillian.
I'm frozen.
Yes.
Okay, so my internet connection is so unstable, and I know we are out of time. And I see questions from my friends at Sarah J. Ketchuk and Jampa are asking about sleepwalking and dreaming. I know. What I'm going to do is, because we have to end here, I'm going to give you homework. Your homework, everyone, is to see if you can find out what causes sleepwalking. If you can find out what causes sleepwalking, that's the first one. And then the second, what causes sleepwalking? And is it the same as acting out your dreams? So that is the homework. I will see you next week. We'll start with that because I'm seeing everybody, and you will tell me what is sleepwalking? Is it the same thing as acting out your dreams? And then we'll pick up from there on the next class.
Then 당아도 대 뒤주 저도 나버도 나로네 지거든이 그게 망고도 아니 타이네 강갔단데 랜드시아 뒤주민도 이나 야나버서라 아니 낭종제 샤제 안 루긴스 낭종 가레슬나 sleepwalking 콜 니 나로 고마pen 드라지 도디 콜 시버티게 도 인자디 가리 이민디 세주셰제 아니 자제 나로네 네주 가주도 루루 제제 세주셰네 따로체스 아니 디 든디기 니 나로 고마pen 드라 데이터 ni sebe ka ki an kuma pen ro ni di ne chikpare do remindo ro ni khube ka kuma pen ro ya de ngone ra ani ni khub ni sebe ka kuma pen ro dan de chikpare do remindo ani ni khube ka kuma pen ro dan de ani khande yungdo ati zeju na je simju na je ne ju ru se na ro na de nangjo yin ani chugo ma to to do any
Okay, I'm going to make sure that my internet is better next week and we will get a lot more accomplished. I am very, very sorry. But we didn't get through half of what I wanted to today, but we will be able to get a little bit more and we will learn more about neurotransmission and we will learn about emotion next week. But don't forget your homework, sleepwalking. What causes sleepwalking and is it the same thing as acting out your dreams?
Ojen tanda daride tanda tajek netandi forget gain shusati da tajeki netang yak shame san dinde ton chik paporu porula ane chetu mang pujab ga chung sun de kongge me shu shuai ane jima adu tuktu ane tajek netang tos yaru ro yake rawa shugins ne tene adu tanda taleng lopchi ti nang logi ane chod nibadi niba ta sumba ni parula so niba de sumba susula 아니 왕제 침박고다 왕제 진동차와다 왕제 침박고 직체 근데 숨바데라 삼용고도 전에 소야이스 아니 뒤 다리 최시땡 번나신기 내내주 강가마 슈투마소 제가 라스모도 슈투마소 스타지마 베즈슈기스 이네 나버서기 통만이 난 거야 제라 낭종 그 피샤이와 낭종 인지민지 세로나스 아니 낭종 가르스나 니 코베가 고바변 드라이트와 디 가르진 연구도 가르레샤 간데 연구도 세직다 근데 대당외수 고바변 드라이니 바로라 개발하도.
And the last thing I want to say is it is very ambitious to try to teach 1 hour of sleep when I taught a whole semester class and many of your colleagues, the Emory Tibet Science scholars, were in my full semester class this year. And so it's very ambitious to try to teach everything about sleep in 1 day.
네, 다른 거저 니고라 취수 찍는가? 니만 나로네 취수 찍는가 해야지. 제 되네 지 미습서지레스 대 용 데나로네 차단 셰트에 매버서지. 그래서나 걔나 데롭지나 외깔리나 아니 롭티 차단직 이제 나와 망보 열와 나와 망보 유행 롭티 차단직라 아니 주시 샤제 롭티는 게 예스 아니 단랭기 텐진자즈네 로비언 톱갱기 쿠쇼 넘버 소기네 겐진랭 군두네 아니 롭티 차상직이 이꼴도스 아니 롭티 톱이어레스 이제 텐데네스 토네 지지직 나로 차상셰트야 용화거리 야마레디 저제르지레다스 저제레스.
Okay, Tukjeche.
Okay, thank you.